From the flashy red carpets to family drama, what 50 Cent did to the Flenory family was absolutely brutal. The Black Mafia Family is a name that echoes across the streets of America, especially in the world of rap culture. The story of Big Meech, born Demetrius Flenory, has had an incredible rise and a devastating fall. From the days of running a drug empire worth millions of dollars to his eventual incarceration, his story became a legend in its own right. Big Meech was a man who held the keys to power. He controlled the flow of illicit substances across the country and developed an empire that was impenetrable. However, what happens when that empire crumbles? What happens when the man who built it all is reduced to begging for financial assistance? A man who was once invincible is now dealing with the harsh realities of a crumbled empire. And then there's his son, Lil Meech, who is navigating all the trials of fame and fortune. While he once seemed to be the heir to his father's throne, he too is discovering just how fragile the luxury-filled lifestyle is. Despite his fame, Lil Meech has been buried in financial difficulties of his own. His own spending habits, lack of financial discipline, and inability to manage wealth have put him in an even worse situation than his father. The story of Big Meech and Lil Meech is not just about drugs, money, and the criminal underworld. It's also about the relationships, trust, and betrayals that happen within families. It's a wild tale about how wealth, fame, and pride can lead even the most powerful to ruin. You'll be shocked to hear how all of this happened. Big Meech's story begins in the 1980s, when he and his brother, Southwest T, first entered the drug trade in Detroit, Michigan. Together, they built an empire from the ground up and created the Black Mafia Family. With connections running so deep, they were able to supply illegal substances across multiple states, including Ohio, Tennessee, and Georgia. Their network expanded rapidly, and soon they had a supply chain that rivaled every hooligan in North America. Big Meech was the face of BMF. His riz, bravado, and larger-than-life persona drew attention everywhere he went. While most drug dealers operated in the shadows, Big Meech loved the attention. His wealth was shown off in public with crazy parties, gold chains, and even private jets. He wasn't just about selling drugs, he was about his business, an empire that extended beyond the world of street pharmaceuticals. Meech was a visionary in the sense that he saw the potential for BMF to become huge. He linked with musicians, actors, and athletes, creating connections that would go on to have a lasting impact on the hip-hop industry. But the money didn't last forever, and breaking the law put BMF in crosshairs. In 2005, Big Meech and his brother Terry were arrested, leading to their eventual conviction. Big Meech was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. However, even while locked up, Big Meech's influence continued to ripple through the world of entertainment. He maintained relationships with various hip-hop artists, including Young Jeezy, who became an integral part of the BMF image in the rap world. While in prison, Big Meech's story only grew. His name was synonymous with power and wealth in the rap community, and it wasn't long before his son, Lil Meech, stepped up. The expectation was that Lil Meech would inherit his father's empire, but that didn't quite play out the way many had imagined. Here's how everything went wrong after Big Meech got out of prison. Big Meech's fall from grace didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn that involved poor financial decisions, mismanagement, and the high cost of maintaining a lavish lifestyle. After being released from prison in 2020, Meech hoped to revive his life. He wanted to come back stronger, re-establish his connections, and rebuild his empire. However, his financial situation was far worse than he had anticipated. Big Meech's life post-prison was difficult, to say the least. Despite his fame and the ongoing success of the BMF TV series, which brought in millions for 50 Cent and Stars, Big Meech himself struggled financially. He had barely any savings after being in prison, and the criminal network that once sustained him was gone. On top of that, Big Meech's attempt to re-enter the entertainment industry was hampered by his lack of financial choices. The most unexpected thing happened when Big Meech created a GoFundMe page, asking for financial support from the public. This was a man who had once lived in a mansion, owned expensive cars, and threw extravagant parties. Now, he was forced to rely on the generosity of strangers to help pay his bills. It was a humbling and shocking turn of events for a man who had once had everything. Big Meech's financial troubles weren't just the result of throwing money around, they were also influenced by the people around him. Many of his former associates, those who once helped him build his empire, were either incarcerated or had turned their backs on him. Big Meech was left with few options, and the only thing he could do was try to save his name and the popularity of BMF to stay relevant. But like father, like son, Lil Meech had a life just as entertaining. Lil Meech was born into a life of wealth and privilege. His father's fame, power, and influence had always shielded him from the harsh realities of life. As a result, Lil Meech grew up with an innate sense of entitlement and a complete lack of understanding of money. When Lil Meech entered the public eye, particularly after being cast in the role of his father in the BMF TV series, he was propelled into the spotlight. The fame came quickly, and and with it came the pressure to maintain the same lavish lifestyle that his father had once enjoyed. But Lil Meech didn't have the same financial discipline as his father, and it wasn't long before he began to blow through the money he made from acting and social media. Reports surfaced that Lil Meech had spent upwards of $100,000 on designer and shiny accessories, with one of his biggest splurges being a pair of Chrome Hearts jeans that cost a whopping $100,000. His Instagram was filled with photos of him dripping in luxury brands, living a lifestyle that seemed disconnected from the reality he was about to face. Lil Meech's spending habits were a far cry from the wisdom that his father once practiced when building his legacy. His inability to manage his wealth was one of the main reasons why he found himself in trouble, and it created a growing sense of tension between him and his father. But it wasn't just about money for Lil Meech. As the pressure grew, so did the cracks in the relationship between father and son. The rise of BMF as a hit brought a unique set of challenges for Lil Meech as he was thrust into the spotlight. While his father's name was already known for the Black Mafia family's rise to power, Lil Meech was still a young man trying to find his own identity. The journey from being the son of a notorious drug lord to becoming an actor and media personality in his own right was not without its obstacles. Being the son of a man whose criminal empire made national headlines placed Lil Meech in a difficult position. His connection to Big Meech was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it opened doors for him, as his family's legacy and the fame of his father allowed him to gain access to exclusive networks within the industry. On the other hand, it placed an enormous burden on his shoulders. He was constantly compared to his father, scrutinized by the media, and expected to live up to a legacy that had been built on criminality and notoriety. In the early days of his public emergence, Lil Meech was often seen through the lens of his father's image. People expected him to embody the same bravado, the same vibe, and the same cutthroat behavior. However, Lil Meech was a different person. He wasn't just another person from the streets. He was a young man with dreams of carving out his own path in the world of acting. The weight of his father often felt like a trap. On one side, he could lean into the criminal element of the Flenory family's past and gain credibility in that world, but it would mean sacrificing his desire for something different. On the other hand, if he attempted to distance himself from the legacy, he risked being labeled as a failure or someone who didn't respect the hard work and sacrifice his father had made. This created a constant internal struggle between who he was expected to be and who he wanted to become. When Lil Meech decided to pursue acting, his path was made more difficult by the public throwing shade on his every move. It's not unusual for children of famous individuals to struggle with stepping out of their parents' shadow, but Lil Meech's case was even more complicated. His father, Big Meech, was still in prison while the BMF series was being developed, and the show's production was intimately tied to the real-life Flenory family. Lil Meech's performance in BMF was met with a mix of praise and skepticism. On one hand, many admired his ability to embody his father's persona so well. His resemblance to his father was uncanny, and he managed to capture much of the confidence that made his father such a prominent man in the streets. On the other hand, some critics questioned whether he was relying too much on his family's name and legacy to secure the role, rather than truly earning it through his acting skills. These critics made it even harder for Lil Meech to prove himself as his own person. Like many young people who grow up in that kind of environment, Lil Meech faced his own personal struggles with addiction. Trying to distance himself from its criminal past created internal conflicts that were difficult to navigate. The feeling of being constantly judged, whether by the media, fans, or even himself, added to the emotional toll that fame placed on him. Lil Meech became open about the fact that he wasn't immune to the challenges of addiction. The pressures that came with fame, combined with the complexity of his family's past, led him to experiment with substances as a way to cope with the emotional and mental strain. His transparency about his struggles was refreshing to some, but it also highlighted the darker side of fame, how difficult it can be to maintain your identity when the whole world is watching. As he continues to navigate the entertainment industry, it will be interesting to see how Lil Meech uses his experiences to shape his future. Whether or not he continues to pursue acting or moves into other ventures, one thing is certain: his struggle with fame has already shaped him into a more self-aware and grounded individual, capable of forging his own identity outside of the shadow of his father's notorious legacy. 50 Cent, a longtime associate of Big Meech, had always been more than just a rapper. He was a businessman with a keen eye for opportunities. His relationship with Big Meech, which started in the mid-2000s, eventually led to the creation of the BMF TV series. The show was a hit, but it was also a reminder of how quickly things can change. 50 Cent had invested significant time and money into making BMF a success, but as Big Meech's financial troubles mounted, it began to affect the show. As the Flenory family's reputation became more associated with financial instability, 50 Cent began to reconsider his business relationship with them. But it wasn't just business that was at play here, there was a vendetta as well. In a shocking shocking turn of events, the relationship between 50 Cent and the Flenory family has always been one of both business and personal intricacies. What started as mutual respect for each other's ability to navigate the complex worlds of entertainment, street culture, and business gradually deteriorated into something far more contentious. The BMF series, which became a cultural phenomenon, was a testament to this bond, but it also became the catalyst for betrayal and discord within the Flenory family and between 50 Cent and Big Meech. It's no secret that 50 Cent has always had a fascination with the underworld. His own background, growing up in Queens, New York, and being involved in street-level hustling before becoming a global music sensation gave him insight on the drug trade and the streets. For him, stories of power, betrayal, and ambition were not just about entertainment, they were deeply personal. When 50 Cent met Big Meech, the connection was instant. Both men understood the language of the streets, the price of loyalty, and the sacrifices that come with building an empire. By the time the BMF TV series was created, 50 Cent was already a powerhouse in his own right. With his production company, G-Unit Films, he had already taken control of various media projects, and BMF seemed like the perfect fit. It was a way to bring the legendary rise and fall of the Black Mafia family to a wider audience. But behind the scenes, there was an element of self-interest for 50 Cent too. He knew that aligning himself with Big Meech and BMF would solidify his reputation as not just a rapper, but as a powerful producer and cultural architect. The show's success was inevitable. It was a hit, especially among hip-hop fans who loved the story of BMF, and its influence was far-reaching. However, as the show gained popularity, the real-life Flenory family began to unravel, and 50 Cent found himself drowning in the consequences. 50 Cent began to distance himself from the Flenory family. He made it clear that he wasn't going to continue promoting BMF in the same way. While the show would continue to air, the public support from 50 Cent that once seemed so secure was no longer a given. There were rumors of 50 Cent slowing plans for future seasons of the show, or even pulling the plug on certain projects tied to the Flenory family. Though he didn't outright end the partnership, the level of involvement from 50 Cent diminished, and the friction became apparent. The betrayal wasn't just felt in the boardrooms and production meetings, it played out in the public eye. Big Meech, once the central figure of BMF, was now no longer at the center of the show's creative process. The show's depiction of his life, while still compelling, began to feel disconnected from the man it was meant to portray. In interviews, 50 Cent made veiled references to his issues with Big Meech, calling out the Flenory family for their inability to handle their business, both in terms of finances and personal conduct. There was no direct confrontation. 50 Cent is always calculating and strategic, but it was clear that the loyalty he once extended to Big Meech was gone. Big Meech, for his part, responded with a mixture of frustration and disappointment. He had always trusted 50 Cent, but he now found himself questioning the loyalty of the man who had helped elevate his story to the public. Meech's attempt to rebuild his legacy through public gestures, such as seeking financial help from fans, only added to the sense of desperation. As 50 Cent's disdain for Big Meech grew, so too did his public distaste for the idea of being involved in Meech's financial troubles. The rift between the two men was no longer just about business. It had become personal. The world of entertainment, especially the world of hip-hop, is full of complicated, often contradictory relationships. But the fallout between 50 Cent and the Flenory name became a well-known tale about the cost of betrayal and the fine line between business and friendship. For Lil Meech, the aftermath of his father's strained relationship with 50 Cent was equally damaging. As a young man trying to forge his own path in the entertainment industry, Lil Meech found himself caught in the crossfire. While he had tried to establish himself as a legitimate actor and producer, the collapse of the family dynamic meant that he too had to grapple with the consequences of his father's actions. The relationship between 50 Cent and the Flenory family may never fully heal. As both Big Meech and Lil Meech continue to navigate their respective struggles, the damage done by the brutal backstab is likely to have lasting effects on their careers. The tale of the Black Mafia family is complicated, shaped by ambition, loyalty, and betrayal. And while the story of Big Meech and Lil Meech will continue to interest audiences, the behind-the-scenes drama between the Flenoris and 50 Cent is a stark reminder of how quickly alliances can crumble in the face of greed, pride, and desperation. Big Meech and Lil Meech's journey has been one of tremendous highs and devastating lows. While Big Meech built an empire from nothing, he ultimately watched it collapse under the weight of financial mismanagement, betrayal, and family dysfunction. Lil Meech, once seen as the heir to his father's legacy, now faces the consequences of his own reckless behavior. Their story serves as a warning about the dangers of wealth, fame, and the false security that comes with living in the spotlight. And as they continue to navigate the complicated world of business, family, and legacy, only time will tell whether they can ever rebuild what has been lost.